Blue Archive changed the way I play games, or at least the way I play gacha games. For those of you who don't know, Blue Archive was never my first gacha game. Instead, it was Genshin Impact. Like a lot of individuals, the popularity of the game, the fact that it was free, and the fact that it had a very nice art style really drew me in. So, I played Genshin Impact. I still do play Genshin Impact to this day. I make content on it, which I may move to a separate channel, but I have yet to discuss and figure that out. And my time in Genshin has been rather fun. I enjoy the characters, I like the animation, I like the art style, and I like the combat. But playing Blue Archive, especially for a long period of time, and after this long of a time, has really changed the way I play gacha games like Genshin, like Arknights, like Fate Go. Because a lot of the videos I make currently are about characterization and story and good writing and introduction and how the game presents itself to you. Blue Archive did something entirely different from Genshin to me. And it's instead altered the way I view characters, the way I view pulling or summoning, and how I virtually and realistically play games as a whole. So, let's talk about that. If you're new to the channel and you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing because I want to hit at least 5k subs before the end of the year. And my birthday's coming up, so you know. But regardless, when talking about gacha games, the main thing you want to consider is usually the gacha system itself. How difficult is it to secure specific units? How difficult, and what's the pity like, if there is a pity? And with Genshin impacting my first gacha game, I didn't have a perception or really a concept of a lot of these things, and I instead learned it over time. And when I took that information from Genshin to Blue Archive to Arknights, it really transitioned over. And I had to either learn something new or kept a lot of the same information and my understanding, which really, in my opinion at least, helped me adjust to the fact that I had a limited amount of stamina, to different types of stories, to how the game is played and told. However, Blue Archive, as I mentioned before, tells its story and does its characters justice by giving you the option to learn more, by giving you time with characters you enjoy, by giving you quests, by giving you relationship stories, to the point where you get to know that unit in particular. I mentioned numerous times, Izuna was the one who drew me into this game, and she still is. I do still adore her, but in comparing that to something like Genshin Impact, I never really had a character who drew me into the story itself. I instead got drawn in from the beginning, I pulled a Venti, and that's it. And when comparing how I pull in Genshin versus how I pulled in Blue Archive, Genshin was more or less regarding either a pull every unit or pull the most meta-defining units. An example is Aika in Genshin. I don't even like her. I don't like her design, I don't like her playstyle, but I have her. Whereas in Blue Archive, the only units who I don't like that I don't use are ones I accidentally got whilst pulling at someone else. I've never summoned for a unit with the intent on them being meta. I've never pulled for a unit with the intent on them being or helping me push further into content. Blue Archive has taught me to pull for characters I enjoy over characters that I think are going to help my account. And I think that's a very important distinction because overall, in my opinion, Blue Archive does a lot better job of getting you enticed by a character's design, by their aesthetic, by their appearance, by the personality, as opposed to saying, hey, they're meta-defining, get them. And for me, it's made me enjoy the game a lot more. Despite not pushing or putting as much into the game in terms of money, I have enjoyed my time with this game far more than I have with Genshin Impact, and for far less. Now, I understand that value is subjective, and you realistically could play Genshin Impact and feel that you've gotten more for your money simply because the models are 3D, you can see skills in different animations, you get cutscenes, you get voice acting in your language, whether it's English, Japanese, etc. So you could feel like you've gotten a lot more value from your money or just for your time in Genshin Impact, and that's perfectly understandable. But in my personal opinion, I feel that I've gotten a bit more value equivalent to the amount I've spent. And that could be entirely subjective and entirely based on how much you put into the game. For example, consider this. The equivalent to Genshin's constellations is the star system in Blue Archive. You can get a unit of higher rarity and then progress them to further stars simply by pulling and using the leftover LFs you have. Or Ligma. I don't know what it's called. Ultimately, it means that you only have to spend or pull for one copy and then everything else can be pushed on further naturally over time. My Izuna, my Azusa are both 5-star units at this point due to just me playing the game naturally. I haven't had to continuously pull for that particular unit. Whereas in Genshin, if I want a constellation, I'd better pay up, because there is no way to naturally gain the materials used for a constellation unlock, essentially a Stella Fortuna. And as a result of that, Blue Archive has drastically altered my perception not only on the value I get, but on the value of specific units. Now I find myself in Genshin not necessarily pulling because a unit is new or because they're cool, but because and based on whether or not I like them. Because sure, the test runs and trial runs can make them seem amazing, but if I don't like the design, if I don't like the personality, or something that really pulls and draws me in, it's not worth the money, it's not worth the investment to continuously try to pull for them. And this isn't an attitude I really had when I first began. I would pull for meta, I would pull because they were new, I would pull because my intention, my thought process always was, they'll be useful in the future, I'll use them in the future, I will get an Ayaka now because eventually I'll build her one day. And let me be honest, it doesn't carry over. It doesn't make any sense because you're putting valuable resources, investment, and primogems and money into people you aren't going to use and people you don't care about. Getting something for meta reasons or for the sole purpose of gameplay isn't exactly fun when there's much more. You're missing out on like 50% of the entire purpose of owning a unit. If I'm going to continue with the Ayaka example here, if I get that character and I play her and I don't like her look, I don't like her personality, I don't like her story, I don't like her design, then I'm really just getting her to hit big damage numbers. And ultimately that leaves me with like what, 20% of her kit because I'm having to not play her on the field because I don't like her design, because I don't like her personality or skills. It's pushing so much content away that it's not worth the investment to begin with. And Blue Archive really changed that for me. It made me into an individual who views things in a much different manner. I look at a character design, I decide, do I like how they look? Or is there something about their gameplay that really makes me want to use them? Like to the extent to where when I don't play them, I'm like missing out on their kit, or I really feel like I want them back on my team. And sure, Blue Archive does not necessarily have the same in-depth game mechanics as Genshin Impact. Instead, Blue Archive has a much more in-depth characterization and stories and cutscenes than Genshin. And there are different valuations, sure, don't get me wrong, you have raids, you have different mechanics, you have different terms of activities, but at the end of the day, it's still a vaguely similar concept. Now, this unfortunately doesn't necessarily come out and affect other games. For instance, Arknights is very much more strategy based, so it's much more difficult in my opinion to base a character and pull for them simply off personality, especially given how Arknights portrays its characters and its story. But ultimately, and I have been saying this for a while, I do plan on making an Arknights video. Nonetheless, Blue Archive has affected the way I play gacha games, the way I view my characters, the way I view my spending, and whether or not a character is worth it to me. I understand that some individuals and some characters and some units in games are really good in terms of meta, or really good in helping you clear content, and arguably clearing content awards you with more items or, essentially wishes or pulls that you can do in the future. They award you more with like gacha currency, and in some cases that can be a great thing. However, in certain games like Arknights, or certain games like Genshin even, you can clear content relatively easily. Even Blue Archive, you can clear content relatively easily with whatever unit you want. So it does come down, at least in my opinion, to personality, to design, to aesthetic, to how they appear to me. And Blue Archive has opened my eyes to that. So I guess what I'm saying is Blue Archive made me into a much more of a waifu/husbando over meta individual. And I'm definitely not complaining. Tell me down below, do you have a specific character in Blue Archive that you adore, that you love, that you really have become attached to? And how did it change your perception? My name has been Zay. I hope you've liked this video. If you did, consider leaving a like down below, subscribe and becoming a channel member, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.